Hey, what's up, guys? You're listening to a brand new episode of Speaking Wrestling with Elvis Arroyo. I am Elvis Arroyo, and this is episode number 9. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Lots to get into this week. I hope everybody's been having a great week. What a week for WWE television this week it's been as we head into WWE Stomping Grounds this Sunday. But before we get into all that and much more, I want to remind you guys that this podcast is available on YouTube. You can listen to past episodes and this episode on our YouTube page. Go ahead and subscribe to the page. Find us at Speaking Wrestling with Elvis Arroyo. And also, if you guys have any questions, comments, suggestions for the podcast, or be up to date with anything new for the podcast, go ahead and follow us on Instagram at Speaking Wrestling. And we are also available on Twitter at Speaking Wrestle. Alright, guys, what a week it's been for WWE TV this week, like I said. Raw, what a difference this week it was from last week, and this is a show that's been getting good reviews from you guys. I've been seeing you guys posting on Twitter this past Monday as I was live tweeting. Great episode of Monday Night Raw. What a difference. I don't know what it is, but my theory is that it could be the California shows, those early shows, the West Coast shows. Who knows what it was, but what a difference it was for this week's Raw. I enjoyed the show. You guys definitely enjoy the show. Live from Staples Center this week is interesting thing. When I was watching this, I noticed right away one thing. As I noticed, because I've been to Staples Center many times, this might have been the first time for a television taping that the top section of Staples Center was tarped off, and I just thought that was a little strange that Staples Center, Los Angeles, the second biggest market in population, in U.S. I might be wrong, didn't sell out, and you can kind of hear it. It wasn't as loud as it normally is. This place always sells out. Monday Night Raw, SmackDown. Interesting to see, what this place is going to sound like and look like for the first episode of SmackDown as they move into Fox in October, and it will be live from Staples Center. So. But again, what a great show. This show was packed with so much. There was one point where I looked at the time and thought, we're only an hour and 20 minutes into this, and I feel so satisfied. And we still have about half a show left of Monday Night Raw. And this show was filled with so much. I mean, title defenses, we had number 1 contenderships. There was 2 out of 3 falls matches. There was an elimination match. And if there's one thing that I noted this week from watching TV, it is the return of the backstage segments. And it's not that they went away. There's always been backstage segments, but not like these ones. And these ones had a feel that reminded you of watching, past WWE television, a little bit of the Attitude Era, where the backstage segments played a story into the story. It wasn't just an interview backstage or just 2 people walking or whatever, a face-off. It was more than that. It told story, and as we saw this week with the Drew McIntyre segment with Heath, we saw Seth Rollins and his attacks all over superstars in the Raw locker room. And again, we saw with Apollo Crews. And another interesting thing is the walk-ins. Daniel Bryan and Eric Rowan, as they were walking into the building, that's something that I really miss from WWE programming. It's, when a superstar is walking into the building, it gives you a more realistic feel that these athletes are professionals and they're traveling and they're walking to buildings and making the towns. I really love the backstage segments this week. They were phenomenal. It's good to see them. The production of it was key to it, and you can tell the details and input that went into these backstage segments, and they were great. And like I said, superstars that haven't been being used were utilized this week on a star-studded episode of Monday Night Raw like this. We got to see Eric Young as he was in a segment backstage with Seth Rollins being attacked by a chair, but nonetheless, we saw Eric Young, and he had some few lines. We don't often get to hear Eric Young speak, so this week was great. And as I said, Heath Slater in that segment with Drew McIntyre, he did get attacked, but a great segment. I love the whole, as Heath Slater went in and asked for a raise to Shane McMahon, and, Shane McMahon said, I'm not going to give you a raise, but you can walk out of here. And Drew, back from the 3MB days, told him, I don't want to see you like this. You're a friend of me. Let me help you out. And, obviously he was just, playing possum and sneak attack on him. But good stuff. I really love the dramatic feel of that, and that's what I really felt from these backstage segments, more than just being a cluster backstage, just setting up the next fight, or a feud between a few two opponents. This told a story, and it was a thread to a bigger story that's already going on. So I really like this. It shows more character building. We got to see a different side of Drew. He really, felt bad for Heath and was going to offer him some money, and felt a little sympathetic. And you don't see that from Drew, and only in a segment like this, telling a story like this. These guys go way back. I really like that the detail of focusing in on past sequences or relationships between superstars, and then bringing it into the fold. It's no different from when Eric Young before he got beat up, him and Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins said, "Hey, we're pals," and I'm sure that's a friendship that goes back to Ring of Honor days or working in the Indies before they got here. So good stuff there. I really love this, and again, those walk-ins of showing the superstars walking into the building again just brings that realistic feel. That they're traveling and they're making these towns. So kudos to the WWE for that. I'm gonna probably say that maybe that's a little bit of Bruce Pritchard in there, and might be wrong, but a lot of this stuff that we've been kind of raving a little bit about, like 24/7 title and all that stuff, it's been Bruce. So if Bruce has a hand in this, and maybe he has others that are following his lead, Jeff Jarrett's part of the writing team. If these guys have anything to do with this, kudos to those guys, because it shows on a program like this tonight. And for them to utilize superstars that aren't being utilized and have being them showcased, and for us to talk about, because here we are talking about two guys I've mentioned that we don't often talk about here on a weekly basis. And one guy that does not get talked about, but if he does get talked about, it's for many different reasons. EC3. He was going to be featured as Baron Corbin's referee for this Sunday at Stomping Ground, but he was ambushed by Seth Rollins. Again, another victim of Seth Rollins. And Seth Rollins was on the rampage this night, and we'll get to Seth Rollins, but attacks EC3, and EC3 is knocked out. And again, right away, I think many people would believe that he is being buried, and this is Vince McMahon's way of once again punishing him and beating him down and treating him like garbage, and not respecting him for his talent and for his looks and for what he is capable of being, his potential in this company. I don't think so. I love the segment went after that, because the New Day came out and they were in a tag team match with Baron Corbin and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Had a funny segment with EC3 as he was an official, and they needed an official, and he was knocked out cold, and a little bit of Weekend at Bernie's type of action stuff going on here. Funny stuff. So for those that believe that EC3 is being buried, or Vince McMahon does not like EC3, I don't believe that. And to be honest, I do believe that Vince McMahon knows who EC3 is and his potential, and he believes in him. Otherwise, he wouldn't use him, and he wouldn't put him in spots. I mean, he wouldn't mention him. Think of the superstars back there that are not on TV, and EC3 is being chose, on somewhat, on a weekly basis. He's been in the picture. We see EC3 on TV. So for Vince McMahon to not have a thing for EC3, and he's being buried, I don't buy into that. I think EC3 is in a good spot, and I think this is just Vince's way of maybe testing his patience and seeing if this guy's, really who he thinks and wants to be a top player in this company, then he's going to have to play by the rules. And right now, I think EC3 right now is just playing the game, and he's going to get his time. So all you see EC3 fans out there that want to see him in a better spot, patience is a virtue. And like I said, Seth Rollins was on a rampage Monday night in Los Angeles, attacking people left and right. He attacked Elias at the top of the show, which Elias was out insulting the fans of Los Angeles and the Los Angeles Lakers. And he was attacked by Seth Rollins to open up the show with a steel chair, as Seth Rollins made it clear that if there's anybody that is going to side with Baron Corbin or be the second or be the special guest referee at Stomping Grounds, then they are going to pay a price with a steel chair. And Elias, Eric Young, EC3 were all victims of a brutal attack by Seth Rollins Monday night. Seth Rollins on Rampage. What's going on with Seth Rollins? What's keeping him up at night? It's Brock Lesnar, and it's the impending doom of a beast breathing down your neck who can strike at any moment, and he might have struck this night on Monday Night Raw because Paul Heyman made it very, very clear that Brock Lesnar might show up here tonight and not wait till Stomping Grounds. He might not wait another night. And Seth Rollins was in the main event against Daniel Bryan Monday night. Good match. I think it was a little bit rushed. Seth Rollins and Daniel Bryan. I would love to see this match at another point on a television weekly episode of Monday Night Raw with only 9 minutes left on the show. And then there was a run-in with all the tag teams, which had no point in this match. I didn't like it, but I will say that it paid dividends because in the end we saw Baron Corbin be the last one laughing with the steel chair because he ambushed Seth Rollins and left him laying in the center of the ring, and Baron Corbin looked dominant on Monday night. Could we see Baron Corbin as the new Universal Champion? Well, we got a glimpse of it Monday, but Seth Rollins wasn't done this for this week as we would move along to SmackDown. But again, overall, Monday Night Raw, so much going on on this one episode. We saw AJ Styles in the club, AJ Styles in a backstage segment, hyping up the club, letting them know that, what have they done lately since they've been on TV? They haven't been on TV, as a matter of fact. And ever since their debut in that building of LA at Staples Center, they haven't done anything there. Hasn't been a bigger pop in their time in WWE since the night that they debuted. Well, Monday night they had an opportunity to impress AJ Styles as they went up against possibly the greatest tag team in all of wrestling, the Usos. They came up short. I like this because I think we might be seeing a little bit of AJ and the club kind of reuniting. Interesting. I don't know where this really is leading to. Why are they getting them together? As we know that Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson did not re-sign their contracts, and they are out the door. And who knows? We might be seeing them on AEW television in the near future. But again, also noted, AJ Styles and the club are going to be touring together, and they're going to be teaming up with Triple H on some shows as they make their way over to Japan. So I think it's maybe a little bit of that, some promotional work leading up to those shows. But again, AJ in backstage, who is out to be with an injury, this is good for him, and I like this. And the reason why I felt that this episode of Raw was filled with so much was because you saw so many faces, and though not everybody had in-ring time and was out there for some action, they were featured on the show, and I think that's a good use of talent if they're not being featured on the show. And I think that's maybe one thing that as we as fans get a little bit mixed up is if someone's not in action or they're not going out to the ring and competing, we feel like they're not being used. But they can be used in a way like this with AJ backstage, and there was many segments backstage this week. Again, the backstage segments, were the stars of the show of Monday Night Raw and SmackDown this week. We saw the segment with Zelina and Apollo backstage, and Apollo, looking for Andrade, and then he gets ambushed by Andrade. Look, that's the only segment that we get to see of those three for the week, and it's great. It's fulfilling. And it carries on the story onto next week. It builds up to it. I like this a lot. That's what you got to do with the talent, and it's an issue right now that we as fans may be a little bit complaining about with the use of talent on both shows, and as we know with this whole wild card rule, and that's one thing that it's really affects the show. It's this wild card rule, and we're gonna get into some of those storylines. But again, going back into this, it's the use of characters being used on both shows. Like we see Roman Reigns and the Shane McMahon storyline being portrayed on both shows, and we see the storyline with Seth Rollins this week going on to both shows. We also see that with Alexa Bliss and the Bayley storyline on both shows. So we think that we're getting too much of certain superstars in one show. And how do you fix that when, there's more talent backstage that could be utilized? Backstage segments like this week is a perfect way to utilize the rest of the talent if they are not competing. So I like those backstage segments. And again, the talent, more talent being utilized is great. And this week we saw talent that hasn't been utilized in weeks. We saw the return of the Viking Raiders as they were in action this week over against some local talent. Great way, squash match. But again, I don't think the fans are into him and are buying into him because they're not being utilized every week. But good to see them, as well as we saw Heavy Machinery this week on SmackDown. They took on the B team. It was a very quick match, but again, tag team wrestling is being used again, and I like that. I think they've been listening to this podcast and know that I've been asking for more tag team wrestling because we have not seen them. And their last pay-per-view had no tag team championships featured on them. Good to see the tag teams being used this week. Good stuff from Heavy Machinery. Otis, hilarious, very entertaining. They're getting a title shot this Sunday at Stomping Grounds against Daniel Bryan, Eric Rowan. Would be an interesting match to see. Can't wait for that. Iconics were in action Monday night. Like I said, there was a championship title match on Monday Night Raw. Iconics took on Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. Iconics pick up the win here, but nonetheless, we got a championship title match on Monday Night Raw. And speaking of Alexa Bliss and Nikki, Alexa Bliss had a Moment of Bliss segment this week episode of SmackDown with Bayley. I don't even think Bayley was the guest, but she was on the show, and I really like this. I think this was probably the segment of the week for me, and I'd say the promo work and the back and forth on the mic between Bayley and Alexa was great in the segment. And towards the end of the segment, it was really interesting because it almost seemed as if Bayley and Alexa went a little bit over their lines on this one. And I think Alexa took it upon herself to go along with, maybe with a character and just lay it into Bayley with, I think, a real, a shoot promo on her. And I think it got Bayley upset. I think they were supposed to execute the finish like that, but I go back and listen to that. It seemed as if Alexa and Bayley, you know, did a shoot promo at the end of that, and it felt real, and I really like that. And Alexa Bliss is just so good on the mic. This is a good rivalry. Again, I did mention that the wild card is confusing a little things, and it doesn't matter anymore. I think that's Vince's goal, is he wanted it to get to a point where we just don't care about the wild card rule anymore, or don't notice it anymore, because here you have a Raw superstar competing for the SmackDown's Women's Championship. I mean, if that doesn't tell you right there that there's a lot of convolution storylines going on, and the writers didn't go back and look back at that one and how that would end up, I don't know what to tell you, because that's a perfect example of the wild card and the mess that it provides. But if it gives us good promos and segments like Alexa Bliss and Bayley on Moment of Bliss, like this week on SmackDown, then great, because those two are great. And I look forward to this match because I look forward to watching these two. These two are my favorite competitors on the women's division. And I did say that this week there were some interesting things going on. Awesome Truth got back together this week on SmackDown. This was a fun episode of SmackDown, I would say, and segments like this was great. And R-Truth and The Miz against Elias and Drew McIntyre. And Drew McIntyre looked very impressive in this match as he heads in to his one-on-one match with Roman Reigns on Stomping Grounds. Overall, television this week, WWE was great. All right, guys, and speaking of Stomping Grounds, let's get into our Stomping Grounds preview. We got Seth Rollins going one-on-one against Baron Corbin for the Universal Championship. I'm going to go with Seth Rollins on this one. I don't see Baron Corbin winning this championship anytime soon, although he is a future champion. But I don't think Seth Rollins, this run he's got going on as a babyface, hasn't been so impressive. I really thought that when Seth would turn face and be the number one guy in the company, number one top guy, that it would be a little bit more better and he'd be accepted more, but it doesn't seem like he is the top guy. Again, there's a conversation of, there's no more one top guy. It's a number of guys now holding the company up. Again, Seth Rollins is going to be in this because I don't see Baron Corbin and a Brock Lesnar storyline down the future. So Seth Rollins retaining the Universal Championship. Kofi Kingston defending the WWE Championship against Dolph Ziggler in a steel cage match. Dolph Ziggler asked for this match. Will he finally win the WWE Championship? I don't think tonight will be the night that Dolph Ziggler wins the championship. Kofi Kingston is on a roll, and I think Kofi Kingston looks to continue that role into the rest of the summer. I don't see anybody stopping him soon. Who will his next opponent be? We'll find out. Becky Lynch against Lacey Evans for the Raw Women's Championship. Again, I think it's a little bit too soon for Lacey to win it, and also too soon for Becky to already lose both her championships just following that historic run of WrestleMania. Becky Lynch will be picking up the win for the Raw Women's Championship here. Bayley versus Alexa Bliss for the SmackDown's Women's Championship. We talked about this. I look forward to this a lot, but I am going to go with Bayley. I think Nikki Cross might have a role in this, and it's going to be cost Alexa the win. I don't think that the Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss friendship is quite there. I think Nikki felt a little bit bad for Bayley Lee getting, that brutal ending assault by Alexa on SmackDown, and she saw the real side of Alexa. Alexa's been making herself out to be a real friend and someone that she can trust, and she is a compassionate person, but her actions on Tuesday, I don't know, maybe left Nikki thinking otherwise. But I do think Bayley will pick up the win here. Roman Reigns in a rematch of WrestleMania with Drew McIntyre. Look, Drew McIntyre has to pick up this win because if Drew McIntyre does not win here, I do not want to hear another Roman Reigns, I am going to eviscerate you. No, no, no more of that because we know you're not going to win. And Roman Reigns, look, a loss for Roman Reigns here isn't gonna, mean shit. Roman Reigns could lose here. There's going to be some outside interference. Drew McIntyre could win dirty. It doesn't matter. Drew needs the win. Roman can take a loss here. So I'm going to go with Drew on that one for sure. Samoa Joe defends his U.S. Championship against the new number one contender Ricochet, who competed in a great five-man elimination match this past week on Monday Night Raw, which featured The Miz, Braun Strowman, Cesaro, and Bobby Lashley. A little bit confused in that because at some point Cesaro and Lashley were eliminated from the match, and they assisted Ricochet on eliminating Braun Strowman, which then left The Miz and Ricochet to go one-on-one. Ricochet picks up the win. Impressive. 630. New number one contender. But again, going back into that, the Braun Strowman, being taken down by Cesaro and Lashley, I don't know where that's going. Maybe it's a continuation of Lashley and Braun Strowman, or, introducing Cesaro into the picture now, and then we'll get, Cesaro and Braun Strowman like I've been wanting to see because we want to see that power versus strength match. So interesting thing there, but again, Ricochet, number one contender, went a little bit off there, guys, but I'm still here against Samoa Joe. This is, an indie dream match. If you've been following these two guys, I'm gonna go with Ricochet here, being the new U.S. champion. I think Joe is a great champion. Joe doesn't need a title. Joe is a great character. I think Ricochet having that title and then having guys like Cesaro, Lashley would be a good guy to chase after Ricochet. Who knows? There's many competitors that, again, aren't being utilized, but with a guy like Ricochet, throw in there a Bobby Roode, throw in there, a Robert Roode, and Eric Young and EC3, build up that U.S. title scene on Raw. So I'm going to go with Ricochet on that one. Daniel Bryan and Rowan defending their SmackDown championships against Heavy Machinery. I'm going to go with Daniel Bryan and Rowan on this one. I do see this feud maybe carry on further. I see some more promos in this, is why I don't think that, handing over the titles. And it's way, way, way too soon for Heavy Machinery to pick up some championships, as they've only been on TV a short number of months and for very little. So too soon for them. As we also get another tag team match, New Day taking on Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. This is just another television match. Does this pay-per-view need this match? No. Do I want to see this match? No. I will say that Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn will become victorious over the New Day this weekend. And it's got to mean something. And I've been saying on this podcast for several weeks now, that go ahead and make Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn an official tag team. Not this pairing that you can throw around on a six-man tag, on a tag team. You need them to fight the faces, close out a show, take some bumps, and all that. No, make them an official tag team and have them go after tag team gold. It's the only thing you got left for these guys to do, because I do not want to see them just being utilized on Monday Night Raw and SmackDown. 5 hours of programming revolving around Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. So get them involved in some tag team championship storyline. And this is why I'm picking Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, because I do think that, something will come out of this. They are defeating possibly the best tag team in this modern era, the New Day. So Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, I hope they become a tag team after this. And I hope people see something in them. So cruiserweight action, Tony Nese in a triple threat match against Tozawa and Gulak. Look, I'll be honest, I have not been watching 205 Live. I do kind of keep up a little bit with it, and somewhat, from listening to other podcasts, know what's going on there. I'm going to go with Gulak. I think it's time for Gulak to carry that title. He's great on the mic. He's a great heel. And I think having a guy like Drew, take that title. He's been featured on NXT the past recent weeks, going up against Kushida. I think Drew is a good representative for that. And if not, if it stays on Nese, maybe further on down, he'll drop it then. But I think Gulak, if they're going to go with him now. So yeah, guys, that's Stomping Grounds so far. There might be other matches on the show for a 4-hour show, and there's only, about 9 matches on the show. I don't know. I really think that, there's more that could have been done. I don't see the Revival. I don't see the Usos. I don't see Finn Balor. I don't see Randy Orton. Who knows? This weekend, I hope you guys enjoy the show. I will be watching. I'll live tweet if you guys will join me there. But again, before we go, last thing before we go, we always close out with MVPs and floppers of the week. All right, and my MVPs for this week are The Miz and Alexa Bliss. Miz this week was amazing on that mic. He had a good promo with Shane as they were going back and forth on SmackDown, and Miz was just on his game, cutting probably one of the best promos of his career. Go back and watch it. It's one of those where the Miz, it's not Miz, it's Mike. And he was, being very vocal about how, one thing I mentioned, of how Shane is, all over WWE programming as of late. He's on Raw, he's on SmackDown, and it's causing, other talent in the back not to be utilized and featured on the program. And Miz was speaking from the heart. And he was speaking for the rest of us. He's speaking for those like me who are very critical of the programming and of the talent not being utilized. It's one thing that was mentioned on the John Moxley interview a couple weeks ago on Wade Keller's podcast. And I think Miz really spoke from the heart, and kudos to the Miz for mentioning Ontario, because he's the only one who mentioned Ontario this week. Again, Raw didn't sell out. Ontario on SmackDown sold out, but they didn't get mentioned. But Miz went ahead and mentioned them, so kudos to the Miz for that. And again, Alexa Bliss, she was all over Raw and SmackDown this week. She had a great promo with Bayley, and again, it felt real. It felt like it was coming from a place that, wasn't scripted. As, she mentioned, Bayley had peaked in NXT and hasn't been, anything since that. And everything that Bayley wishes she could be, the role model and face of the WWE, it's not her, and it's been Alexa Bliss this whole time. I mean, it just felt real. It is real. However, if you want to look at it that way, really, it's your perspective. But it does shed a light on facts. And Miz and Alexa Bliss this week in their promos were just speaking facts, and that were validated by what's going on television and what we know. So The Miz and Alexa Bliss this week are my MVPs. And floppers of the week, I gotta mention that 2 weeks ago, flopper of the week was Kevin Owens. And I did say it's not Kevin Owens, it's, the way he's being booked and his character as of late. He's on a little bit of a slippery slope, just being featured on tag team matches and just being that odd man out. And then last week's show on my floppers of the week, Kevin Owens once again made it to the floppers of the week, this time with Sami Zayn, because I do believe that the pairing, I don't like it, but if it's going to go somewhere, hopefully leading to an official tag team, then I'm cool with it. But Kevin Owens with Sami Zayn, and Sami's been great. He's been great on the mic post WrestleMania since coming back, and he's a funny character. He's a very intriguing character, which is why I did say Kevin Owens made it to the floppers of the week with Sami last week, because I do think it's Kevin and he's bringing Sami with him. But this week, I gotta say, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn both make it to the floppers list this week. And it's, again, because they were all over Monday and they were all over Tuesday night on SmackDown. And they were just being featured in tag team roles, being the heels, taking bumps for the good guys. And again, that's a slippery slope for two guys that could be featured as main events. I mean, you could have Kevin Owens in that Dolph Ziggler Kofi Kingston match. You can have Sami Zayn in a championship match. You can have Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens. That'd be a main event. But instead, you have Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn just wandering around Raw and SmackDown, teaming up with Baron Corbin, Dolph Ziggler, just teaming up against a pairing with Kofi Kingston, Seth Rollins, and then just teaming up against the New Day. Where is it going? And that's why I keep bringing up that you got to make it an official tag team, because if they are not chasing after something, what is their purpose right now on the show? And I'm a big fan of these two guys. Believe me, despite the fact that Kevin Owens has made it to the floppers, of the week list for 3 weeks in a row, I'm still a fan of these guys, and I want to see them utilized. All right, guys, and that's going to do it for me this week. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Speaking Wrestling. Be sure to check us out on YouTube over at Speaking Wrestling with Elvis Arroyo. Go ahead and subscribe to that. And again, guys, if you want to get in contact, any update with us, or also have any questions or suggestions for the podcast, be sure to find us over on Instagram at Speaking Wrestling. And join me this weekend on Stomping Grounds, as I will be live tweeting. And go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Speaking Wrestle. All right, guys, enjoy Stomping Grounds this weekend. We'll do it again next week. Have a good one. And it's an issue right now that we as fans may be a little bit complaining about with the use of talent on both shows. And as we know, with this whole wild card rule, and that's one thing that it's really, you know, affects the show. It's this wild card rule, and we're gonna get into some of those storylines. But again, going back into this, it's But again, going back into this, it's the use of characters being used on both shows. Like we see Roman Reigns and the Shane McMahon storyline being portrayed on both shows. And, we see the storyline with Seth Rollins this week going on to both shows. We also see that with Alexa Bliss and the Bayley storyline on both shows. So we think that we're getting too much of certain superstars in one show. And how do you fix that when, there's more talent backstage that could be utilized? Backstage segments like this week is a perfect way to utilize the rest of the talent if they are not competing. So I like those backstage segments. And again, more talent being utilized is great. And this week we saw talent that hasn't been utilized in weeks. We saw the return of the Viking Raiders as they were in action this week against some local talent. Great squash match. But again, I don't think the fans are into him and are buying into him because they're not being utilized every week. But good to see them, as well as we saw Heavy Machinery this week on SmackDown. They took on the B Team. It was a very quick match, but again, tag team wrestling is being used again, and I like that. I think they've been listening to this podcast and know that I've been asking for more tag team wrestling because we have not seen them. And their last pay-per-view had no tag team championships featured on them, so good to see the tag teams being used this week. Good stuff from Heavy Machinery. Otis, hilarious, very entertaining. Uh, they're getting a title shot this Sunday at Stomping Grounds against Daniel Bryan. Eric Rowan would be an interesting match to see. Can't wait for that. Iconics were in action Monday night. Like I said, there was a championship title match on Monday Night Raw. Iconics took on Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. Iconics pick up the win here. But nonetheless, we got a championship title match on Monday Night Raw. And speaking of Alexa Bliss and Nikki, Alexa Bliss had a Moment of Bliss segment this week episode of SmackDown with Bayley. I don't even think Bayley was the guest, but she was on the show, and I really like this. I think this was probably the segment of the week for me, and I'd say the promo work and the back and forth on the mic between Bayley and Alexa was great in this segment.